On my honor, I will never betray my badge, my integrity, my character, or the public trust. I will always have the courage to live. So, welcome to episode number 63 of the On the Blue Line podcast. We call this Monday Morning Roll Call, and I am your host and founder, Wayne Mulder. This week, the cost of a free and undivided republic. Monday Morning Roll Call starts now. So welcome. So today I wanted to have a specific Memorial Day conversation with you. In fact, I'd already planned out most of what I was going to talk about and had sat down to do it when last Thursday I noticed the New York Post had ran an article. And the headline of it said, "Most Americans have no idea why we celebrate Memorial Day." That really doesn't surprise me, because sadly, a lot of Americans don't know why we do a lot of things we do and what our early founding fathers thought and what early documents say and so forth. But it was interesting on the survey that was done, and this was done by the University of Phoenix. And they went on to say that less than half of Americans know the true meaning behind Memorial Day. The survey of 2,000 Americans revealed just 43% were aware it's a holiday honoring those who died in service while in the U.S. Armed Forces. 28% mistakenly believed it was a holiday honoring all military veterans, and they were confusing it, of course, with Veterans Day, which appeared to be a pretty common mistake. In fact, 36% admitted that they were unsure of the difference between Memorial Day and Veterans Day. They went on and said the survey found that less than half of the respondents knew Memorial Day is celebrated the last Monday of May, and the most common incorrect answer was a fifth, or 21%, believe that Memorial Day falls on the last Sunday of May, which I thought was an interesting confusion. They found that in 2019 they had done a similar survey and it had actually had a similar level of confusion. When asked about the moment of remembrance, the half of those polled had never heard of it. And half of Americans polled also had not heard of the term Gold Star family, which is, of course, a family who has lost a loved one in military service. So Brian Ishmael, the senior director at the University of Phoenix Office of Military and Veteran Affairs and a former U.S. Army sergeant, is quoted as saying, "For many Americans, Memorial Day is a much-needed day off to relax and enjoy their family. It is important to understand that it is also a solemn day of remembrance. For me, as a combat veteran, and for military members and their families, this day holds great significance. Not everyone I served with was fortunate enough to return home." So 83... Though there is confusion as far as to Memorial Day and its foundings and where it comes from, 83% of Americans believe it's important to do something to commemorate Memorial Day. 87% said we should be doing more to honor both living veterans and those who died serving. And 76% believe Memorial Day should transcend politics. And I completely agree. I think nowadays there's sometimes confusion between what is political and what is anti-American, but I agree that it should definitely transcend politics. And 79% of the respondents said their plans for Memorial Day would be different because of the current travel restrictions, and 78% said they have had an opportunity for more reflection this year. I found this kind of interesting, and I thought I would share it with you, that how do respondents plan to celebrate Memorial Day this year? Fly a flag, 43%. Leave a flag or flowers on a grave of a deceased U.S. Armed Forces member, 30%. Attend a local ceremony or patriotic event, 30%, which of course I'm sure due to restrictions are very few are going on. And if so, there's going to be a lot of social distancing measures put in place, which will probably affect those numbers. Fly a flag at half-mast, 29%. Visit a military monument or war memorial monument, 27%. Educate my children about the meaning of Memorial Day, 25%. Wear a Memorial Day button, which I wasn't aware people wore buttons anymore, but 24% said they were going to. Aid a family who lost someone serving in the U.S. Armed Forces, 22%. And educate myself about the meaning of Memorial Day, 22%. So if you're one of those 22%, then you are in luck, because that is exactly what I wanted to talk to you real quick on this week on this special Monday morning roll call. So Memorial Day has an interesting time of history. when we think of the beginning of it, it came at another time of great division. You know, we are in a time of great division. I don't think there's any question about that. We pretty much are a divided nation in a lot of ways. But there was obviously another time in our history that we were extremely divided, so much so that a civil war broke out. And those would have been the years of 1861 through 1865. 3 years after the Civil War ended, on May 5th of 1868, the head of an organization of Union veterans, which was called the Grand Army of the Republic, had established what they called Decoration Day. And the reason they had chosen that name is that it was time for a nation to decorate the graves of the war dead with flowers. Now, what's interesting is this was Major General John A. Logan, and we're going to read about his statements that he made. But he was primarily wanting the Union soldiers' graves to be decorated. And like with so many things in history, there's some debate, especially from this time period. You've got half a dozen states that think they were Lincoln's birthplace, and I'm fairly certain he was only born in one place. But this is no different because there were areas in the South, like down in Columbus, Mississippi, where in 1866 they were decorating the graves of Confederate soldiers who had fallen in the Battle of Shiloh. And nearby, the graves of Union soldiers, neglected because they were the enemy, they had gone over and actually put flowers on those graves as well. Cities in the North and South both claim to be the birthplace of Memorial Day, in both Macon and Columbus, Georgia, Boylsburg, Pennsylvania, Carbondale, Illinois. In fact, in Carbondale, there is actually a cemetery that has a statement that claims that they were one of the first. And approximately 25 different places have been named in connection with the origin of Memorial Day, many of them in the South, and where most of the war dead were buried. And by the end of the 19th century, Memorial Day ceremonies were being held on May 30th throughout the nation. It was not until after World War I that the day was expanded to honor all those who have died in all American wars. In 1971, Memorial Day was declared a national holiday by an act of Congress, though it is still often called Decoration Day. And it goes on. It's interesting that when General Logan, who we're going to talk a little bit more about here in just a moment, in 1868, had people show up there. There was about 5,000 people in attendance, which is about the same size as those who attend Arlington National Cemetery today. So, who was General John A. Logan? And what did he do that became accepted as the first Decoration Day, even though, as I just went over, there's definitely some dispute of where the quote-unquote first actually took place. But John Logan, he was born February 9th, 1826, and he served as an officer with the 1st Illinois Volunteer Infantry during the Mexican War, but did not see any combat. Upon his return, he became involved in state politics and was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives as a Democrat in November of 1858. He was a powerful orator. He staunchly defended the Union during the months leading up to the Civil War, despite representing an area of Illinois that harbored secessionist sentiments. In fact, his oratorical skills swayed many of his constituents to change their views and support the Union. When the outbreak of hostilities, or the Civil War, broke out in 1861, Logan volunteered his services as a soldier and served with a Michigan regiment at the First Battle of Bull Run on July 21st, 1861. And then he went back and he actually received the nickname Blackjack for his black hair, dark eyes, and complexion. He led his regiment into combat for the first time at Belmont in 1861, and he proved a natural military leader and later fought with distinction at Fort Donelson, Corinth, and Vicksburg, and rose to the rank of Major General of the Volunteers. It goes on and talks about a lot of what he's done, but following the Civil War, Logan was instrumental in the founding of the Grand Army of the Republic, a veterans group comprised of former Union Army soldiers, and served as the Grand Army of the Republic's second elected national commander. And March 3rd, 1868, Logan issued General Order Number 11, which called for a National Day of Remembrance for the Civil War dead. And again, he had primarily done it for the Union, not for the Confederacy. But this was the order that he had put out. And I'm going to read this to you in its entirety because I think that it's important to hear the language that he wrote all those years ago. The 30th day of May, 1868, is designated for the purpose of strewing with flowers or otherwise decorating the graves of comrades who died in defense of their country during the late rebellion, and whose bodies now lie in almost every city, village, and hamlet churchyard in the land. In this observance, no form or ceremony is prescribed, but post and comrades will in their own way arrange such fitting services and testimonials of respect as circumstances may permit. We are organized, comrades, as our regulations tell us, for the purpose, among other things, of preserving and strengthening those kind and fraternal feelings which have bound together the soldiers, sailors, and marines who united to suppress the late rebellion. What can aid more to assure this result than by cherishing tenderly the memory of our heroic dead, who made their breast a barricade between our country and its foes? Their soldier lives were the reveille of freedom, to a race in chains, and their death the tattoo of rebellious tyranny in arms. We should guard their graves with sacred vigilance. All that the consecrated wealth and taste of the nation can add to their adornment and security is but a fitting tribute to the memory of her slain defenders. Let no wanton foot tread rudely on such hallowed grounds. Let pleasant paths invite the coming and going of reverent visitors and found mourners. Let no vandalism of avarice or neglect, no ravages of time, testify to the present or to the coming generations that we have forgotten as a people the cost of a free and undivided republic. If other eyes grow dull and other hands slack, and other hearts cold in the solemn trust, ours shall keep it well as long as the light and warmth of life remains in us. Let us then at the appointed time gather around their sacred remains, and garland the passionless mounds above them with the choicest flowers of springtime. Let us raise above them the dear old flag that saved from dishonor. Let us in the solemn presence renew our pledges to aid and assist those whom they have left among us as a sacred charges upon the nation's gratitude, the soldiers and the sailors, widow and orphan. It is the purpose of the Commander-in-Chief to inaugurate this observance with the hope that it will be kept up from year to year. While survivor of the war remains to honor the memory of his departed comrades, he earnestly desires the public press to call attention to this order and lend its friendly aid in bringing it to the notice of comrades in all parts of the country in time for simultaneous compliance therewith. So that was the general order that he had put out. What many people don't know, and what I found so interesting, is when you look back at some of the first ones, they were literally small one-page orders. Come to modern times, on December 28th of 2000, there was a National Moment of Remembrance Act, which of course took Congress 14 pages to do something that they used to do in half a page. But at least it comes complete with description, or well, with definitions, like what Memorial Day means. I find that very important. But anyway, overall, this is a really good public law that came in on December 28, 2000, and it's called the National Moment of Remembrance Act. And as that newspaper article had pointed out, very few people even knew it existed. So, the findings, Congress finds that it is essential to remember and renew the legacy of Memorial Day, which was established in 1868 to pay tribute to the individuals who have made the ultimate sacrifice in service to the United States and their families. So they're going back and pointing out the general order that I just read that Major General Logan had put out. And they say greater strides must be made to demonstrate appreciation for those loyal people of the United States whose values, represented by their sacrifices, are critical to the future of the United States. The federal government has a responsibility to raise awareness of and respect for the national heritage and to encourage citizens to dedicate themselves to the values and principles for which these heroes of the United States have died. The relevance of Memorial Day must be made more apparent to present and future generations of people of the United States through local and national observances and ongoing activities. You guys were absolutely correct. And as evidenced by the newspaper article that I read, half the country has not done that. And only 23% intend to educate themselves on where Memorial Day came from and on teaching other future generations. So in the House Concurrent Resolution 302, again I'm reading, agreed to May 25, 2000, Congress called on the people of the United States in a symbolic act of unity to observe a national moment of remembrance to honor the men and women of the United States who died in the pursuit of freedom and peace, In Presidential Proclamation number 7315 of May 26, 2000, the President proclaimed Memorial Day, May 29, 2000, as a day of prayer for permanent peace and designated 3 p.m. local time on that day as the time to join in prayer and to observe the National Moment of Remembrance. And a National Moment of Remembrance and other commemorative events are needed to reclaim Memorial Day as the sacred and noble event that the day is intended to be. And then it goes on to state that the minute beginning at 3 p.m. local time on Memorial Day each year is designated as the National Moment of Remembrance. So, in the National Moment of Remembrance Act, they wrote, this was needed to reclaim Memorial Day as the sacred and noble event that the day is intended to be. You know, when I was sitting down thinking over what I want to talk about, and I know this has had a lot of history and a lot of reading and a lot of maybe somewhat boring stuff for some, but I think it's important to understand where it came from and the language that they used. You know, we live in a time where we rarely regard things as sacred, unless it's our own selfish whims, and so often they are definitely lacking in nobility. As recently as the year 2000, this need was realized and it was codified in the act by Congress. Today, Decoration Day or Memorial Day is the epitome of this remembrance. We remember the sacrifice of those in all wars and battles that furthered the great march of freedom in this country that we have come to enjoy, and with the freedoms that we have been blessed with. We live in a time where sometimes these losses and sacrifices are taken lightly. But this year, as we remember the cost of this constitutional republic, as we realize that the final statement in the Declaration of Independence, you know the one, where they said, and for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. That quote, it was not some oratory magnificence, but rather a sobering reminder of the true cost of freedom. May we come together as one nation under God, not a United Nations, but one nation, the great country of the United States of America, and remember that the sacrifice of those who have gone before is both noble and sacred. I encourage you today, at 3 p.m., at your local time, wherever you may be listening to this, I encourage you to take a moment. Take a moment of silence. Remember all of those who died in pursuit of freedom and peace. Their gift is evident in the blessings that we get to enjoy each and every day, and especially on this Memorial Day. Their sacrifice, it must be remembered, it must be honored, and it must be proclaimed. Brothers and sisters, stay safe out there. That does it for this week's Monday Morning Roll Call. I hope to see you next Monday at Roll Call, and in the meantime, I'll see you on the Blue Line. All right, let me take a quick minute here and try to pay some bills and tell you about my friends at Campfire Blend and their whiskey coffee. You know, when I was trying to come up with a company to work with, and this is the first one that we have, I wanted to find a company that believed in and had the values that we had, and a company that had a product that I believed in and that I was already using. And I was already drinking this whiskey coffee oftentimes when I'm podcasting, long before, for months before, I actually had reached out to them and we decided to collaborate on the current thing that we're doing with our two businesses. So I encourage you to go to their website. It's campfireblend.com. Again, campfireblend.com, and finalize your purchase and try out their whiskey coffee. And when you do, enter code BLUELINE. That's all one word, BLUELINE at checkout, and you will get 10% off. That's going to save you money. That's going to help support this podcast, and it's going to help support their small business. I would say that that is a win-win-win. Again, it's campfireblend.com, and enter the code BLUELINE at checkout, and you'll get 10% off. Thanks again.